Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Merlin, Season 4, Episode 2, The Wicked Day. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So, in this episode, it begins with Arthur's birthday celebrations, where they have invited a carnival type, circus type group to perform, and one of the aspects of the performance is that they have Arthur go on a wheel and then throw knives at him, which is successful, and Arthur leaves his birthday celebrations quite drunk, and we know that he is quite drunk because he tries to go visit his father without his pants on, and Merlin has to remind him not to leave the room with his pants off. Arthur then goes to visit Uther, who basically congratulates him on his birthday, comes out of his stupor long enough to tell Arthur, how proud he is of him and wish him a happy birthday. How could he ever forget his son's anniversary of birth, as he called it? However, as they are talking, in comes one of the performers who does attempt to assassinate Arthur. However, Uther manages to fight off the attacker and defend Arthur, killing the attacker but becoming wounded in the process as he is stabbed in the chest. This then leads to Gaius revealing that there is internal bleeding, so while the king is not yet dead, he is dying, and there isn't anything that Gaius can do for him, unfortunately, at this point. Arthur, in desperation, decides that he's willing to give magic a chance to save his father because he cannot watch his dad die, and so Merlin kind of grasps onto this opportunity and decides to once again pose as Dragoon the Great to be able to heal Uther. So him and Arthur go out to an abandoned sort of cabin somewhere in the woods, and Merlin transforms, promises to heal Uther under the promise that if he does so, Arthur will repeal the ban on magic, and then Arthur and Merlin leave, with Dragoon promising to arrive at nightfall at the gates of Camelot, which he does do. Meanwhile, Agravain has been told by Arthur that he plans to use magic to heal his father and goes and tells Morgana. Morgana casts a spell on an amulet to reverse any healing magic effects and then amplify the negative effects to basically ensure that Uther cannot be healed. And so Agravain then puts that amulet on Uther, and then Arthur greets Dragoon and brings him in through the tunnels of the castle to his father's chambers, where Merlin does manage to cast the healing spell correctly. However, due to Morgana's interference and him not being able to see the amulet, which is tucked under the blankets, Uther does pass on. Merlin then has to make a run for it because he's just killed the king. Well, was used as the weapon by which the king was killed, and has to run, uses his de-aging potion to return to being Merlin, meaning that Dragoon does escape, and then he goes to where Arthur is. Arthur reveals now that he does think magic is pure evil. Gaius finds the amulet after the fact, so they do know that it was Morgana who was involved. And then there is Agravain goes to report the success to Morgana, who says that she felt Uther die. However, she's not super happy about this because Arthur is still in Camelot on her throne, or what she believes to be her throne. We then get a brief wake for Uther, followed by Arthur being crowned king at the end of the episode. So now that we've been reminded about what happened, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we'll be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So on our mostly objective rank values, we first start with our multi-season supporting character development. And this, of course, was the fact that Uther was stabbed and died. Second, we had the successful emotional impact of Uther's death. Honestly, I do not hate Uther as a character, so when he died after having 3 seasons of him in pretty much every episode, I mean, he hasn't been a big part of season 4 so far, but I did regret that he had to die in such a way. Of course, because of the nature of the series, we all knew that he did eventually have to die, which did mitigate a bit of the success of the impact, but I still think overall it was successful, especially with Arthur's reaction to it. And so I am giving it the 3 points. Then there is an additional 3 points for the impactful / memorable moment line, etc. And frankly speaking, one of the funniest moments for me in the series, which makes it very memorable, is Arthur giving Merlin as Dragoon the Great a piggyback ride through the castle because Merlin decided to take advantage of the aging potion to complain about his old age and how slow he's moving. And when Arthur then comments on how slow he's moving, he says, "Well, then you can carry me." And Arthur, so desperate to save his father, actually does. It's a great scene. And then last but not least, we have a +4 for our multi-season main character development. And this, of course, is Arthur's birthday celebration at the beginning, concluding with Arthur being officially crowned king at the end, which is a moment that has been long awaited by us viewers of the series. However, it wasn't perfect. There were some negatives. First negative was the character regression, which of course is that Arthur's impression of magic does worsen by the end of the episode due to Morgana's interference. And then -2 points for negative messaging or behavior. And for this, I have 2 concerns, one of which I'm giving points for, the other one I'm just commenting on as like an honorable mention. So first off, Morgana successfully murders Uther by proxy through the amulet. She's gotten her long-time wish. She pretty much assassinated him. That is negative messaging or behavior. That's where our -2 points come from. The honorable mention, however, is how I feel like every magic user in this universe acts against their own best interest. Like, this was a perfect opportunity to change people's viewpoints of magic. Maybe Uther, too lost in the past, might not have appreciated being saved by magic, but Arthur's impression of magic would have increased. Likely most of the people in the palace or the castle who knew about it, which it would get out because that's how gossip travels in places like that, would have probably seen magic in a better light, understanding that it could be used for healing, which would have eventually spread to where most of the workers live, which is the lower town, which again is where rumors would spread about how magic isn't necessarily entirely evil. If Arthur got onto the throne before Morgana, he would repeal the ban on magic, which would then destigmatize it. And again, he would have a positive impression, and the people would have a positive impression of magic being capable of being used for healing. So then when and if she did manage to get the throne back again, the people would already be primed to like her because her main dislikable feature is her magic and how it has corrupted her into evil. But if people didn't know about that part, and they had a positive impression of magic, then the fact that she had magic wouldn't be a stumbling block or roadblock to her reputation once she got into power, so it would really have benefited her to allow Uther to be healed by magic, let all of that go through, and then continue to live and plot for another day, because ultimately, I'm sure she would have succeeded eventually against Uther. So I think she acted against her own best interests here. Additionally, pretty much every magic user except Merlin that we have seen in this series has used magic for evil purposes while trying to make their case that we're not all evil. Again, acting in their own best interests, against their own best interests, I should say, which I think is pretty negative. But again, I didn't take the points for it because it's more of like an abstract concept. Well, not abstract, but more of like a vaguer concept, whereas murder is definitely negative messaging or behavior. And I mean, in theory, there are some situations in which acting against your own best interests can be a good thing. For example, a firefighter going into a burning building where they could potentially die to save other people is acting against their own best interest because your best interest is to not die or get burned, but they would do it anyway. So there are situations where you can consider acting against your own best interest to be a good thing. However, in the context of this, I'm counting it as negative because it really probably would have benefited her to have the people she wants to eventually rule over have a more positive impression about such a huge aspect of her character and person, that being her magic. So, that is what I had to say about that. And ultimately, that leaves us with a 10 out of 10 for this episode. Now, it is only the second episode in the season, so our season 4 ranking so far has The Darkest Hour in first and The Wicked Day in second. Next, we come to my personal ranking. And Uther, I did find it sad when he died because ultimately, while I do think he had a major blind spot where it comes to magic and being against magic, where it makes him irrational and unable to listen to other people, I don't actually disagree with him banning magic, which may be an unpopular opinion, but every single magic user, apart from Merlin, that we have seen in this series, uses magic to try to kill either Uther, Arthur, or the innocent townspeople. In fact, in many occasions, they have managed to kill innocent townspeople. Most recently, in the previous episode, The Darkest Hour, those wraiths, or I know there was a Draka, that's what it was. Those Draka killed a lot of people in the town, in the surrounding villages, innocent people that did not harm Morgana in any way, that she actually says she wants to rule over, and yet she went ahead and cast a spell that knowingly would kill a bunch of them, and then she didn't even kill her real targets. Additional to that, Nimwe's episode where she sent a plague. The plague took many lives before they were able to find her creature and kill it. So it's like you sit there and you're like, I want to be on the side of magic because I do like Merlin, but every instance other than Merlin's in which magic has been used, it has been used to harm people for personal gain, to attempt murder, assassination, thievery, any crime or negative behavior that you can think of. And that to me indicates that while there are some few exceptions, like the only one that we've seen so far, which is Merlin himself, a vast majority, like the ones we've seen in pretty much every episode to date, are using magic in negative ways for negative purposes to harm not only their intended targets, but a lot of innocent people in the surrounding areas of wherever they are targeting. And this means to me that banning magic I don't think was a bad thing. I think as a leader, the leader of the country that is in charge of protecting his people, Uther did make the proper decision in banning magic. Now, was his motivation maybe questionable because it was founded in like selfishness? Yes. But based on the evidence that I have seen in these episodes so far, I think he made the right choice. I think he did outcast and ostracize the few in order to protect the vast majority, the many, the regular, ordinary citizens who are just going about their innocent lives, law abiding. I think he made the better choice. And for that, I can't hate the character. Like I said, some of his reactions to magic and the fact that it was selfishly founded are hits against him, but I think as a leader, as a king, he was capable of making those difficult decisions that maybe weren't necessarily the most popular, but ultimately I think did do a good job in protecting his people. And given the evidence that I've seen, was the right decision, the right call to make, seeing how pretty much everyone who's used magic so far has done so negatively except Merlin, our one outlier. Now, the argument on the other side could be, well, Of course they're using magic to try to kill Uther, and because Uther hunted them down and hunted their people, they've got like this generational grudge going on. And it's like, okay, fine, but Arthur's not at fault for that. Why are they trying to kill him? He's the one who is prophesized to bring magic back, to be on their side, to see their powers flourish. Why are they trying to kill him? They don't have an excuse for that. Why are they killing the innocent people? The villagers, the people from the surrounding villages, sending plagues, sending Draka, sending all of these things. Like, they don't need to do that. They could just target Uther. Would some knights die? Potentially. Some servants trying to protect their king that they serve? Potentially. But at the same time, that's in the course of their professional duties. So that makes sense why they would then maybe die. And while it would be tragic, it also is different from a purely innocent, unrelated individual dying as a result of your targeting of Uther, and then they fail most of the time anyways. And again, if you're wanting magic to come back in a positive light, doing everything that you can to turn the opinions of everybody against magic is just not reasonable. Like, it's not reasonable. Like, you can't say, oh yeah, we've been killing you, sending plagues after you, sending Drak after you, doing all these negative things, withering the fields. When Arthur killed the unicorn, but I feel like that one was justified because that was an automatic response to killing a unicorn. But the point is, killing all these innocent people, but yeah, love us, bring us back, make our magic legal again. I just don't see how they think that's going to work. And I don't think it ever was meant to. And it sucks because that's the whole point of the prophecy is Merlin helps Arthur to unite Albion and then bring back magic into its golden age of Camelot and magic. And that just, based on how they did this, like, I feel like that was a doomed prophecy from the start. It was never going to happen. And a big part of that is because the magic users just cannot let it go and hold on to their grudges, but also act within their own best interests to get magic legalized again. And, once, magic is legal again, then maybe they could bring about their grievances and be like, courts, let's, talk about this negative stuff that you did in the past, or something like that. But I just do not see how they think that magic would be able to come back and be accepted when all they do is act negatively, except, of course, the exception being Merlin. But that's neither here nor there for the actual scoring. But I feel because I didn't hate Uther, because I could see his side, because I actually agree with him to a certain extent with regards to banning magic, I thought he was a good king, and I didn't necessarily want to see him die until, maybe the last season. I would have liked one more season with Uther present. I did enjoy the character. I do think that he was a good plot device for being the bad guy to Arthur's good guy. I did dislike how Arthur is now soured to magic. However, that is again Morgana's fault for once again acting against her own best interests as wanting to be a future queen of these people. Having them like magic when she is magic would have been a boon, but nope, she could not handle that. And then she's not even super happy about Uther's death, which is like, see, sometimes what you want isn't actually what you want. But again, I digress with that. I did enjoy the emotional impact of Uther, on the slab and his like crown with the sword, the wake portion. I thought that was very well done. I liked that they did a candlelight visual. I thought that was a great imagery. I liked all of the Dragoon scenes because they were funny. And I love how Merlin as Dragoon basically just takes out all his frustrations on Arthur, out on him because he can as Dragoon. I also did enjoy the crowning, though I do wish that maybe they had done a little more pomp and ceremony with it, made it a little bit of a longer scene rather than the like, what was it, like 6-minute scene we got? Maybe like a little bit longer, but ultimately I did think that that was well done. I did like how everybody chanted at the end to long live the king in unison, and then at the very, very end, Merlin, louder than anybody, says long live the king, and that's when we get our end scene. Overall, I thought it was a very well done episode. I greatly enjoyed it. That's why I gave it a 9 out of 10, because I cannot say it didn't have some flaws, but overall I think the positives far outweighed them. And that brings our personal ranking so far to in first, The Darkest Hour, and then in second, The Wicked Day. And so we come now to our series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking, we have Season 2 in first place with 70.83%, Season 3 in second at 70%, Season 1 is in last place so far at 69.23%, and Season 4 so far is starting very strong with a full 20 points out of a possible 110. Then we have our personal rankings. Season 3 is in first place, 72.73%. Season 2 is in second with 70.83%. Season 1 is in third with 66.92%. And Season 4 so far also starting strong with a 19 out of a possible 110 points. But with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 4, Episode 2, The Wicked Day. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.